All right, we're going to put the amplitude and then the b value, which shows us the period, all together in an equation. So it would look like this if you're writing sine, a sine bx, and if you're writing cos, you would have y equals cos bx. So we're going to sketch at least one cycle for y equals -3 sine 1/4 theta. So now I have an amplitude of 3. And then a b value. So the amplitude is going to affect the x-axis. Now, if I put a scale here of 1, 2, I'm way up here for 3, which is not horrible. You'd have to kind of draw a line in. But what's going to be easier, when you have your own graph paper, you're going to adjust. I tend to use a couple squares, 2 or 3 for each unit. But if you're using my grid paper here, what I do is then I just instead break this scale. Sometimes I still have to go above there. You'll notice that down the road, but I find this easier. So I still sort of make each one 1. This would be 2. I'm just going to draw in where the 3 is. All right, that's where my max is, and I like to draw in a line to help me, and it's quick so that I know when I'm putting points, I'm on that max line. I'm not going way up and accidentally putting a point above. So that's my max. My min then would be down here at -3. So again, I like to draw a dashed line. Basically, I'm drawing in the grid here, just to show that. So that is my min point. All right, let's look at the fact that we'll talk about the negative sign when we graph it, but let's look at the b value. So the b value is 1/4. So remember that the period is equal to 2 pi over the b value. So we would have 2 pi divided by 1/4. So 2 pi divided by 1/4, we'd say 2 pi times 4/1. So the period is 8 pi. So it's quite stretched out. Let's determine how far apart our points are. So to do that, again, don't put an equal sign because the period wouldn't equal this. I often just say therefore, or just write it on another line. 8 pi divided by 4 is 2 pi apart. So each square is 2 pi. So again, I like using 2 just to space things out. So I'm going to have 2 pi, 4 pi, 6 pi, 8 pi. So I always figure out how far apart my points are. There's no sense putting a scale or you're going to have a really, really long one here. So I always figure out my how far apart my points are. Then I figure out my scale and how I can space it out nicely on my graph paper. Okay. So now let's talk about sine. Sine always starts at the origin, even if there is a reflection. So this is a reflection, or I often talk about positive and negative sign. So it always starts at here, or security. Now, if it's negative, normally sine, you want to go up to Canada, goes up. But if it's negative, it's going to go down first. 2 pi apart. So down first every 2 squares. And once you get that first point, you know the pattern just continues in the pattern through the median, max, and mins. So this is what it's going to look like. Again, very important with the scales. I'm going to put my arrowheads because it doesn't give me the domain. So that means it continues in both directions forever. I am going to fill in this side here now. I usually like to have a complete graph show a little bit on both. It says at least one cycle. I've got 2 cycles, but it's nice to see that sort of pattern complete.